I noticed a couple of things on my drive in. Noticed a couple of things when I got in the car and began thinking, and I thought about the setup, the buildup of all of it. And the first thing I noticed, and I guess as you get older, sometimes it is easier to forget, easier to take for granted, harder to stop and live in the moment of when things are before you that are not once in a lifetime, but maybe once in a generation. And I noticed driving in that it was raining. And I assumed that it rained over the majority of the evening. And yesterday it was really hot and humid, and today it felt a little bit more, the air was a little thinner, it was a little more comfortable. And I realized that meant that it was because it had probably been storming and or just raining consistently. But in my drive in, while I had the wipers on and I hit puddles and the skies were gray, what I noticed in Indianapolis, Indiana is I did not see thunder in the forecast. Didn't see it. Because the only place where the Thunder are relevant now is the fact that that's the last hurdle for the Indiana Pacers and winning their first NBA championship. And at the beginning of the playoffs, Rick Carlisle would say to his team after each win, we are blank number of wins away from a championship. And when he said 10 wins away, you thought, man, that's a lot. And when he said we're 8 wins away, you thought, that's still 2 series. And now you don't even need the thumb. On one hand, you can count it. You can see it. You can feel it. And yes, they have to get past one of the historically great regular season teams put together in NBA history. But I'm calling upon all of you, at the very least, to stop and do this. Absorb the moment, enjoy the moment, embrace the moment, and go all in, push all in. Even if you're not a fan of the Pacers, I get it. Maybe you're not an even NBA fan. If you're a fan of this city, you're a resident of this city. I'm not saying it's your civic duty, but think about this. Let's look at the path the Pacers have taken to get here. They open up against Milwaukee. Milwaukee, who has one of the 5 greatest players on the planet on their roster. And adding to that, they have Damian Lillard, who was certainly, I think by most people's count, probably still a top 20 player in the NBA and was a top 10 to 12 player in his prime and is a lightning in a bottle kind of guy. And the Pacers go in and they handle the Milwaukee Bucks. Now, Milwaukee has won a title of late. They won it with Giannis going for 50 in the clinching game. And people in Milwaukee inevitably were thinking to themselves, here we go, baby. Let's go. And yet, here we are a few years removed from that. And they had to bring in another star to try to get another one for Giannis, and it didn't work out, and the star got hurt, and they got beat in the opening round, and now there's question about whether or not Giannis is going to stay in Milwaukee. Then the Pacers advanced to take on Cleveland, the number 1 seeded Cleveland Cavaliers. The Cleveland Cavaliers that have Donovan Mitchell, that's a lightning in a bottle guy, that have Darius Garland, who's quick as a hiccup, that have Evan Mobley, who's the defensive player of the year. Jarrett Allen, who leads the NBA in field goal percentage. Max Strus, who can catch lightning in a bottle from beyond the three-point circle when he's hot. And those teams in Cleveland were thinking, here we go. Number 1 seed, and we got Indiana, who upset Milwaukee, coming in. Eastern Conference Finals, bring it on. And what happened? The Pacers advance. And Cleveland then looks at their history and says, we had LeBron James. LeBron James for multiple years. And in his prime, didn't win a title. He leaves, goes to Miami, comes back. Then he gets us one because we had Kyrie Irving as well, and we got a title. And now we have a team that got the number 1 seed and got bounced in the second round because they faced a better and deeper and faster team that came on and emerged late in the year. So Indiana advances to take on the New York Knicks. The New York Knicks, who have a coach that has won 50 games back-to-back, first time in forever in Knicks history, and a Knicks franchise that has, if it not for its location and its arena and its name, be toiled in total mediocrity and obscurity. But they have, and they make a trade for a former number 1 pick in the draft in Karl Anthony Towns, who's a unicorn and can do a million different things. And they've got Jalen Brunson and Josh Hart and half of the Villanova teams that won national championships. And the Knicks feel good with home court advantage about the fact that they're going to come in. They just beaten Boston. Yes, Boston had Jason Tatum get hurt, but nonetheless, here you go. And the Knicks had just beaten Boston, who won a title with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown and had all of these pieces. And, oh, my goodness, this is going to be the first of many. The first of many. And then Jason Tatum ruptures his Achilles, and now he's in question for next year, and you wonder what that means for Jaylen Brown. And then you look across the street as you're driving to Gainbridge Fieldhouse to wait in line for what was not a very well planned out swag bag giveaway that gridlocked the city, but you can see off on the horizon Lucas Oil Stadium, and you're like, that's the home of the Indianapolis Colts. And man, do we love the Colts. We bleed blue in this town. And the Colts, I'll never forget the night like it looked like outside today where there was rain in Miami and Prince was singing and Tony Dungy and Peyton Manning were hoisting the Lombardi Trophy and Peyton Manning was in his prime and Reggie Wayne and Marvin Harrison and Joseph Adai, and you're like, you know what? How many are we going to win? How many are we going to win? 1. My point is simply this. Yes, it seems as though for the Pacers, this might be the first of many cracks. This might be the first of multiple spins of the wheel because Tyrese Halliburton is young, because Aaron Nesmith was a stroke of genius, and the Pacers will tell you, they didn't know how it was going to work out. The Pacers didn't know how it was going to work out, but it did. Obi Toppin, they took a flyer on it. The Pacers didn't know how that would work out, but it did. Andrew Nembhard, they saw something nobody else did. Took him in the second round, immediately signed him to a first-round level contract and locked him in. Each thing has worked. Each thing has paid off. And it's kind of like one of those Bob Ross paintings. You don't know when he's doing one funny little, swivel of the brush, what the happy little tree is going to turn into, and then you step back and look at it, and it's a masterful tapestry. And that's what this Pacers team is. But my point is this. It feels as though this could be the first crack at it, and this is perhaps an era that we're walking into. But Milwaukee thought that. And Cleveland thought that. And Boston thought that. And the Colts thought that. So my point for the Indiana Pacers and for the city of Indianapolis is this. The time is now. They're here. They can see it. They can smell it. They can taste it. They can tangibly now know that it's the last obstacle. And their feet are in the soil of the final mountain to climb. And you never know when the chance is going to come again. So I am all in. I'm all in doing everything that I can, and I have nothing to do with the outcomes of the game. Nothing. Nothing. But I can feel like I do. And I love the city of Indianapolis, and I love for the chance for my hometown to show out on the biggest stage, and the biggest stage is now. And I'm all in. And this team, I think, is all in. And yes, there are people that say they're only there because Cleveland was hurt. They're only there because Tatum went down and New York was able to get past Boston. They're only there because Thibodeau only used like 7 players and ran them out of gas. They're only there because Lillard got hurt. I don't care why they're there. They are. And I think the Pacers don't care why they're there. They're there. And they know they're there. And this is what we want and love from our stars. We want and love for our stars to be a part of who we are and represent what we are. Not be a rental, not be a fly-by-night. They live here 7 months out of the year, 2 blocks from the arena, and walk over and go to games, and then immediately they're off to a beach somewhere. That's not what we want. We want players that represent who and what we are in this town. And last night, I'm sitting and I'm watching all of the different press conferences and interviews, and I hear Tyrese Halliburton. Tyrese Halliburton, who when the Pacers traded Domas Sabonis to Sacramento, you're like, okay, Halliburton, I think he's supposed to be a pretty good player. He was drafted pretty high by Sacramento, but it's Sacramento. I hope he's going to be good. And then he comes here, and he develops before our very eyes, and it all comes together for him. And we get the PTSD. He's going to pull an Oladipo. This is my city until it's not, and I want to go to Miami. This is my city until I'm hurt, and then I go to Florida to rehab, and I hardly come back to see my teammates. We get PTSD of Paul George. This is where I want to be. Come to my celebrity softball game. And when I stand there at the celebrity softball game and say that my intention is to stay in Indiana, what nobody knows is tomorrow I'm going to meet with Kevin Pritchard and tell him I actually would like to be traded, and I want to go to the Clippers. We get PTSD of those things. And then Tyrese Halliburton was asked about Indianapolis, Indiana, on the eve of playing in the biggest series of his life, representing all of us, from the Donut Counties to Monument Circle, to Gainbridge Fieldhouse, to Lucas Oil Stadium, from the James Wickham Riley home to the Speedrome, from the Speedway to Greenfield, you name it. He's representing all of us, and he loves it and embraces it. And this is what he had to say about our fair city and now being a part of it and representing it on the biggest sports stage on the planet.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm from Oshkosh, Wisconsin, town of like 70,000 people. There's nothing to do. I didn't have anything to do growing up. I stayed in the house or went to the local YMCA to play basketball, or went to the high school to play, or went to like my park at Oaklawn Elementary, or whatever the case was. There wasn't a ton to do. So I just think in my life, you know, I really feel like right now in my life, I'm not talking about basketball, but like in the off season or whatever, I think I could live anywhere and be just fine. Like as long as I got my dog, my video game, and a court, like I'll be fine. So I just feel like being in Indy, like it's a great place for me, and it's like Indy is a much bigger place than I'm even accustomed to. And I know people say it's a small market or whatever the case is, but I'm not. I didn't grow up somewhere where it was much bigger, have more to do. So I love being in Indy. Indy's been a great place for me and my family. My whole family lives there now, so we love being there. It's a lot of fun for me. I don't need like the glitz and glamour of a large city or anything. I really like I think maybe like hometown, like small town feel from our fans, right? Like I think OKC can relate to that as well. Like our home court advantages are different because people are really passionate about our teams, and their parents were passionate about the team, and their parents before that were passionate about the team. So I think that's like a different type of home court advantage, or a different type of fan than like a bigger city, if that makes sense. So that's why I enjoy being a part of it, and why I want to be a part of it, for the rest of my career. I really enjoy, being a Pacer.
Okay, so right there, let's go. Halliburton's in. He's all in, right? He's all in. And it looks like he's, obviously we know he's going to be here a long time. He got a super max deal, or a max deal, but he's all in. But my point being, you never know how many chances you're going to get. You never know. And it's hard. It's hard to get to this level. It's hard to get to the finals. It's happened twice in the franchise history in the NBA. But tonight, 8:30, everything gets underway. We will be, J&V and I both, as a matter of fact. John is going to be broadcasting from the Ale in Fishers. And the Ale Emporium up in Fishers, they'll have the Hermanaki Wings and Michelob Ultra Zero for our NBA Finals watch party is going to be there, courtesy of our friends at Zinc Distributing. I'm going to be there. I think, Eddie, are you ready for this? Do you have breaking news? Do you have the breaking news sounder by chance? Looks like because J&V is going to be broadcasting there live, I think Shannon's going to make an appearance as well. Just so you know. So the elusive, you seem non-excited by that, Eddie. The elusive and enigmatic Shannon will be making an appearance, I believe, at the viewing party. But we're going to be there hanging out, watching the game. Samples of Mick Ultra Zero will be there, and we're going to have a ton of fun. And we're going to party. We're going to party and celebrate and have fun and embrace all of it. Big show lined up today. Tony East going to join us coming up at 1 o'clock. 2 o'clock, the television voice of the Oklahoma City Thunder will join us, Chris Fisher. And we'll get kind of the perspective of, for right now, what I think is a market and a franchise that there is a reciprocity of respect. But we'll see how that deviates over the course of this series. Then, of course, after games 1 and 2, they come back to Indianapolis for games 3 and 4. Eddie Garrison, what we know is this. About 18 minutes ago, tickets went on sale for those games, for those that did not already have them from a season ticket standpoint, correct?
Yeah, so the Pacers insiders have an access right now until 2 o'clock, and then it's open to the general public for tickets for games 3, 4, and 6.
And do you have a price on those tickets?
It has been reported to me that for Game 3, in the top row of the balcony, face value, 1 ticket, $600.
Okay. That's not overly surprising, is it?
I don't think so. I was told it was going to be somewhere around $500.
Yeah, so $600 face value. Right now, what's the get in the door price? Now, I think actually I have a friend that is going tonight to Oklahoma City. And in Oklahoma City, I think actually the tickets may be more affordable. As a matter of fact, I'm looking right now on the secondary market in Oklahoma City. Now, obviously, you're running out of time if you want to get there for tonight. But if you were to go, let's just say game 2, okay?
Okay.
Would you like to guess how much the entry price is going to be for game number 2 on the secondary market?
Are you looking at so it'd be resale, right? At
secondary
this point?
market, correct.
In Oklahoma City, I'll say 547.
Ooh, you know what? 670. So that's on the secondary. That's before fees. If you'd like to go tonight, if you want to go tonight, $530 to get in the door.
So I was close.
Before fees.
But I was Price is Right rules. I was wrong. So I was over on game 3.
Before fees, that's the price. But I'm super pumped up about it, and I'm optimistic. I know that there's a ton of talk about Thunder in 6. I think that seems to be the prevailing opinion, Thunder in 6. Eric Corgi says Pacers in 6. But I know that Thunder in 6 seems to be the most common or trendy answer.
Is it weird for me to think that this game will not end in 6 if it's the Thunder winning this series? I feel like it's going to be Thunder in 5 and Thunder in 7, but the Pacers sure as hell ain't letting OKC win the finals here in Game 6.
That is a very good way of looking at it, yes. I mean, yes, it is hard. You would think that they really need to get one of the two in Oklahoma City.
Oh, yeah.
And I've always felt that the time to get one is game 1 because you kind of catch people off guard a little bit, right? Now, do you remember? Let me tell you the finals that to me is the blueprint. The blueprint for Indiana, yes, sir.
We're in the YouTube chat just talking about the tickets right now, and fake Roy Hibbert said that he would offer his Corgi to me for 2 tickets.
Do you have 2 tickets?
No.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I don't want anybody please, nobody be giving away your dog for tickets.
After taxes and fees, it looks like it's $680.
Okay. Per ticket, though, right?
Yep.
That's some serious coin for sure. That is serious coin for sure. Now, I recall very vividly back in 2004. In 2004, that was the year, if I'm not mistaken, that the Pacers went into the Eastern Conference Finals with the Detroit Pistons, correct? And that particular playoffs, the Pacers were pretty loaded. Had a really good team. I think they were the cream of the crop, if you will, I think a lot of people will tell you, were the Pistons and the Pacers. And that was the year that, going into Detroit in a must-win game, Ron Artest allegedly missed the team flight. He overslept. And then I think he racked, I can't remember if it was Richard Hamilton or Chauncey Billups, and got he kind of had a meltdown. And the Pistons went on to the NBA Finals. But when the Pistons went into the NBA Finals, they took on the Los Angeles Lakers. And the Lakers were, if I recall correctly, that year, because the Lakers had developed a dream team. The Lakers were the 2 seed in the West. The Lakers absolutely were like everybody's favorite. It was seemingly impossible that the Lakers, it was a fait accompli that whoever won the East was going, and they were going to be the sacrificial lamb against the mighty Lakers. They'd won 56 games, Phil Jackson, their coach. But then you looked at their roster, and they'd gone out and they'd gotten Karl Malone, and they had Kobe Bryant, and they'd added Gary Payton. They were loaded by all account. The Pistons, on the other hand, didn't really have any big-time superstars. Chauncey Billups was a solid player. Rasheed Wallace was a solid player. Richard Hamilton had a really good mid-range game. Ben Wallace was an enforcing, solid player, but no major superstars. But what happened in that series? What happened in that series was Detroit went in, and the team that was the better sum than any individual parts won game one, got things, lost in game two, and then came back and took off, and literally they win in 5 games, and they controlled that series. They controlled the series because collectively as a team, and yes, years later, 20 years later, you hear a lot about Gary Payton. You hear a lot about Kobe. You hear a lot about Shaq. You hear a lot about, not as much about Karl Malone, certainly off court you hear a lot, but as players. You hear a lot more about those players than you do the players that played for Detroit. But Detroit's the one that is immortalized with the ring and with the title, and that's, I think, a lot of what this Indiana team is. Years from now, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, probably going to be a guy that we're talking about for a long time. He has a chance to become the first player in some 30 years to win a scoring title, an MVP, and an NBA title in the same season. Historical level greatness. And Chet Holmgren is a unique unicorn-type player. I don't know that necessarily Williams is a guy that we'll be talking about 25 years from now, but who knows? He averages 22 a game. Defensively, they are elite. But this Indiana team is built different. You've heard me talk about how much I love the individual selflessness of this team. Does anybody really think Aaron Nesmith cares tonight whether he scores 25 or 5 as long as they get to win? We all know that guy. We all had that guy. You played basketball, everybody knew. There were always 2 guys on every team you played on. You get on the bus to go home, you lost a close game, but one guy in your team had 21, and you looked and you could tell that guy ain't hurt. That guy's not upset that he got his 21. And then also on virtually every team, you get that guy that you get on the bus You won by 4 in a close game, and a guy that averages 15 for you had 4, and he's the first one coming in high-fiving and smiling because he got the win. We all know that guy. And the Pacers have virtually none that I know of the first guy, and they got a ton of the second guy. Aaron Nesmith, Andrew Nembhard, Obi Toppin, TJ McConnell. Do you get the impression any of these guys care how many they score or what they do as long as they get a W? Tyrese Halliburton, for that matter. Tyrese Halliburton's got a grin as wide as 465. I think they're widening that, by the way. But you see it more based on wins and losses than on what Tyrese Halliburton does. And that's what I absolutely love about it and about this team. Like I said, big show lined up. We're going to talk to Tony East. We'll go out to Oklahoma City and talk with a guy that knows their team as well as anybody. That's coming up in the 2 o'clock hour. When we come back, the coach of the Thunder, his thoughts on this series as we get set 8 hours from now, just over it for game number 1 NBA Finals. Query and Company here on a generational event day. We're at the base of the mountain, and we start climbing later. Now, why do they mute that out?
I don't know.
You can't say that?
I don't
Planes get high, right? 38,000 feet cruising altitude, right?
know. Right? No, it's Jake. It's we're at 32,000
Always. Every
feet.
time, right?
Yeah.
Folks, have they, speaking of that on airplanes, can they do something about the audio that like the volume? Because first off, everybody's got on headphones anyway, but you can barely ever hear. Don't you ever, like whenever they come over and they make an announcement, doesn't everybody always then say, like, what did that guy just say?
You know, there is one company, I'm not going to say which one, where if you have your headphones plugged into the head, like your entertainment system or whatever they offer on the back of the seat in front of you, it goes over the earbuds.
Oh, I think they all do that.
Not all of them.
If you're listening to the in-flight entertainment, the television or is it ELS or BLS is the name of the like automated, the music that's in the armrest. I think those are always interrupted. That's got to be an FAA rule, is it not?
Maybe, but
That it goes over.
I know there's one in particular that does come through the earbuds or headphones, but the other one, another one does not. I know that.
You're saying there's an airline that does not. I'm going to dispute you on this. I'm going to disagree respectfully. I will wager that it is I'm going to wager that for every airline, if the pilot makes an in-flight announcement, that it automatically goes through any airline-produced audio.
I wonder if it depends on the plane.
That's a fair question. You mean like if it's a certain model or a certain year?
Yeah, if it's a Boeing or if it's one of the newer.
I'm going to wager that it's a requirement, that it's a law, that if the pilot has an announcement, that it has to bleed over the whatever you're watching or listening to, if it is in fact, because doesn't it usually on the screen it will say like announcement in progress
or something? Yeah.
Yes. It has to let you know, I would think. But the Pacers obviously are in Oklahoma City. They did fly there. We told you about the fact they got diverted to Tulsa. And there was a little bit of I'm not going to say chaos. When you are landing in an area and there is a tornado, as they were flying into in Oklahoma City, and they were diverted, or even just on a plane in general, it feels like when you're in the cabin, there's a chaos going on. But what you don't know is it's, a level of an organized chaos in terms of you being rerouted. And, they know exactly what's going on. They have the radar. They know, all of those things. So you are sitting there and you are entrusting that they have a firm hold on what's taking place, and they do. That's not unlike the Pacers offense. It's an organized chaos, as it's known. I've listed it as a hybrid of the motion offense. And I know that Rick Carlisle has an appreciation and an understanding and a love for the motion offense. And the motion offense, which I've never totally understood, open disclaimer. When I played basketball, we ran a flex offense. We ran an offense called Tennessee, and we ran a couple of different ones. But the motion offense is, Indiana and Bob Knight were most known for it. Pete Newell ran the motion offense. There were certain coaches that kind of mastered the motion offense. And the motion offense is essentially a nonstop motion of a pass. As soon as you pass the ball, you then set a screen, and it's a constant, almost like a circular motion of that. And the design of the motion offense, you don't have necessarily a designated score in the motion offense, but there is a certain spot where when it rotates through by the certain number of passes, it creates openings that gives you the best look. And the Pacers offense is an element of that. There's a little bit of that, I think, in its core. But when you watch it, the way that they move that basketball around and the weave in which they do, it's almost like the Butler, Brad Stevens offense combined with the motion offense and then added like 54 cans of Red Bull. That's kind of what that offense is. It's an organized chaos, and it's designed to go fast, and it's designed to operate, especially in coming off of transition, before a defense can truly set itself. And then once the defense sets itself, you are moving in such a way that the ball is oftentimes the Pacers are making a pass before the guy is even there. And it confuses defenses. Now, Mark Dignault is the head coach of the Oklahoma City Thunder and is, a younger guy that is clearly a very good coach. And he was asked about trying to prepare against what the Pacers do. And I think his answer was an honest one in terms of the organization of it and the chaos of it as well.
They're a tall task. The fundamentals are not complicated. It's not like we're out here emphasizing new things. We're not inventing anything this week. Their attack is very simple. The theoretical way to stop it is simple, and in reality, it's very difficult to do, as you can see from the way that they've really had their way with everybody. It's one thing to understand what they're doing and one thing to understand what you need to do. It's quite another to execute it. And that's what makes them really hard to play against. I mean, they pump a 99-mile-an-hour fastball at you, and you can, prepare all you want for that. But when you're in the batter's box, it's different when it's time to hit it. So it's going to be a very tall challenge.
If you're ever hitting did you ever hit, Eddie, a 99-mile-an-hour fastball?
Nope, never saw one.
What's the fastest pitch you believe you ever saw?
93.
That was who? Do you remember?
I don't know.
What school?
I don't know. What in high school? It was
You
travel.
were in middle school?
Travel baseball. I don't know. Some Canadian kid.
Really? And
Yeah.
how'd you know it was 93?
Because it was at Grand Park and they had all the tracking stuff.
Did it intimidate you?
Not gonna lie, it was the first time I ever seen it. I was like, holy crap.
Really?
Yeah.
So in other words, like by the time you saw the ball in his hand, it was past you, right?
Yeah, like literally it's if you blink, you miss.
Yeah.
You'll miss it.
There is an element of, I don't know how, great hitters, I don't know how they do that, but I think 90 was the fastest I ever saw, and it was in a batting cage. You could set it, and it was like, what in the world?
Mm-hmm.
By the time you saw the arm come up, it was past you. So, yes, there is Oklahoma City is well aware of what they're facing, but they are also elite defensively, totally elite defensively. And that's going to be one of, if you were to look at it, this is, in fact, like, what is the word? Immovable force and or unstoppable force and a movable object. That's kind of what the Pacers offense and the Oklahoma City defense are. And in any sport, when you have a top offense and a top defense going against one another, some people will tell you every time, give me the defense. Some people will tell you every time, give me the offense. And it's going to be one of the real storylines to watch. We'll talk more about it. Tony East going to join us about 20 minutes from now. We come back. Something that happened last night in the world of sports that, if you are from Indianapolis, probably should mean more to you, or you're more connected to it than you realize. I'll explain and let you know what it is next. You know, something happened last night in the world of sports, and we'll get plenty back into the NBA Finals. This is basically an all-Pacers show today, obviously. Goes without saying. There's other stuff to talk about that is taking place. Tony East going to join us top of the hour. You just heard JMB. He's going to be at the El Emporium in Fishers broadcasting at 3. Then our NBA Finals watch party, courtesy of Michelob Ultra Zero, will take place really beginning throughout the course of John's show, and then I'll get there to get everybody set to be able to watch the game and enjoy watching that. Last night, there are other sports going on. Now, we have talked a little bit about this, okay? A little bit. The NHL Stanley Cup Final. And by the way, it's finals, not final.
No, it's a final. There's only one final.
Correct. Can you name for me Eddie Garrison? I think we've done this on the program before. I'm putting you on the spot.
Okay.
The last Canadian-based team to win the Stanley Cup.
Wasn't it the Montreal Canadiens?
That is correct.
Like, is it 83, 85?
I think it was, can you look this up? I think
2000?
It was 93. It was 92 or 93. Been a long time. Okay, been a long time, right? So you've got the Florida Panthers, and this is the time of year when Brendan King, who you hear on this radio station, starts getting out there, goes on their website and gets to know their roster a little bit and becomes, familiar with them. And the Edmonton Oilers. Now, I realize.
Montreal, 1993.
Yeah. So I hear people right now in their car. I hear you in your office. I hear you. That for that matter, you might even be in the hallway here, saying to yourself, Jake, the Indiana Pacers are getting ready to play in the NBA Finals tonight, the second time in franchise history. The last time they went was 7 years after the last Canadian team won a Stanley Cup final. I heard you yesterday mention USAC Racing, Jake. The Pacers are in the NBA Finals. You haven't even hardly talked about the fact that there are reports that Anthony Richardson struggled in his OTAs and that it looks more and more like the Colts are seriously looking at Daniel Jones as their starter, even though there's a gabillion reps to be had between now and then. You haven't talked about either of those things. You haven't talked about that at all, but you talked about USAC yesterday in Indiana Midget Week, and now you're talking about the Stanley Cup Finals and the NBA Final. I understand it. I hear you all. There is, though, and I know that it's probably not necessarily, necessarily esoteric knowledge. I think most people know of this. But back in the day, way back in the day, you had the WHA, which was a rival league to the NHL. It was not a subservient league. It was a rival league to the NHL. And one of the marquee teams of that, at least locally certainly that people enjoyed, was the Indianapolis Racers. And the Racers, especially in the 76-77 season, there was a lot of excitement about them, optimism. They had good support. The Checkers were here as well, but the Checkers were basically a AAA team. And the Racers, not unlike a lot of sports, there was a lot of hesitation, a lot of holding of the breath in 1977 when Nelson Scalabagna, I'm hoping I'm saying that name correct. It's been a while since I've read or mentioned him. But he was a flashy kind of a Jerry Buss type owner out of Canada, a businessman out of Canada that bought the Racers. And at the time, I think there was, certainly people were like, okay, he's going to keep the team in Indianapolis, we hope. We'll see what happens. But because he was Canadian, he obviously had a firm understanding both of the game and also of rising talent in Canada, which included, and I know everybody knows this, but he signed, amongst other players, okay, he signed a 17-year-old, Wayne Gretzky. Now, Gretzky arrived in Indianapolis and did an autograph session up in Castleton with the play-by-play voice of the Racers. And so this would be the equivalent of if the Pacers signed a marquee basketball player, and then they immediately took him to a place in Indianapolis to sign autographs along with Mark Boyle, and the play-by-play voice was the one that was the star. And people were like, well, who's the 17-year-old kid? Well, he's going to Broad Ripple Night School. He's living with a family up in Carmel. He had to have a central Indiana-based attorney sign a waiver saying that he was his legal guardian because he wasn't 18. And Wayne Gretzky, along with Mark Messier, was a member of the Racers, but Gretzky only played 8 games as a Racer. I think in historically speaking, we look back and we think Wayne Gretzky lived in Indy and was a man around town. No, he played here 8 games. And if you were to ask Wayne Gretzky, I think that he speaks favorably of his time in Indy, but it's literally like a 2-month blip to him. I'm not even sure actually how many games he played in Market Square Arena. I think it may have been 2 or 3 games. But either way, the WHA and the NHL, you're looking at me crazy, Eddie.
Yes, we got breaking news, Jake.
Okay.
Shane Steichen meeting with the media right now ahead of the second media availability for OTA practices. Anthony Richardson sustained a shoulder injury in his throwing shoulder last week. He will be shut down and will miss minicamp. Will not need surgery.
Okay. Now that's, you said in his throwing shoulder?
Yep.
Which shoulder was it that he had the surgery?
Believe it was the right.
So what has always been the narrative or the critique? What has always been the critique?
That he cannot stay healthy.
Correct. At any rate, when the leagues merged, the contracts of Wayne Gretzky, goaltender Eddie Mio, and Peter Driscoll were all sold for $700,000 to the Edmonton Oilers on December 15th of 1978, essentially folding the Oilers the Racers, and that began the dynasty of the Edmonton Oilers. And the Edmonton Oilers then became, obviously, which is the case anyway with hockey in Canada, a staple within that city. I've been to Edmonton on numerous occasions, and I can tell you there's Oilers stuff literally everywhere, and that is largely due to while it was a great franchise and a historic franchise anyway, but a lot of the love affair with Edmonton and the Oilers franchise, as they are now chasing their glory days of that era, was rooted and epicentered in Indianapolis, Indiana, with the Indianapolis Racers. Now, that is big news about Anthony Richardson, because this is a quarterback that every step of the way needs progress. And if he is, again, if he's getting a throwing shoulder injury in OTAs, what does that mean? He landed on it awkwardly? I mean, did they even hit the quarterback?
No.
I've said for a while that it is my belief that Daniel Jones will be the starting quarterback in Week 1. It is my belief Daniel Jones starting quarterback Week 1 for the Colts. And I also believe, now this may change a little bit. I mean, I don't want to get tawdry here and go into prognostications of uncertainty aspects of the Colts, considering Jim Irsay's, the passing of Jim Irsay. I mean, you want to be sensitive to that. But you do wonder how that changes at the top the impressions of, say, Chris Ballard. I don't know the relationship between Chris Ballard and the Irsay daughters. And at some point, we have to start referring to them as the female Irsay owners, or just the owner Irsays. I mean, you know what I mean? They are now the owners of the franchise. But I do believe that Chris Ballard, if it's not the case, it should be the case that Chris Ballard's security within the franchise is largely tied to Anthony Richardson. I mean, you get so many chances, right?
Yep.
And that is a very, very interesting development. Tony East, by the way, joining us in 5. Okay, let me tell you something that happened to me 2 months ago. Bottom line, take my car in. Kind of a weird sound. Don't think it's a big deal. And they say, well, listen, you've got a major repair that needs to be done to your engine. A major repair. And I said, okay, well, that's cool. I've got a warranty. It's not under warranty. So now I'm sitting there and I'm saying to myself, well, here's the thing. Do I need to get a new car? Or do I pay a sizable amount for the repair and move on? So my question then became, I thought the warranty covered this, but it doesn't. So now I have to decide, do I pay for this repair or not? So my question was to the mechanic as well as the warranty person. In your experience, this sort of a repair, is it long-standing? Or if I pay to get this done, is it going to keep recurring? And that was the decision I had to make. And that's exactly the decision the Colts are in now. Because when Anthony Richardson had his shoulder issue, he was under warranty. In the fact that they did surgery and said, this surgery is we're going to do this now and do this surgery because then that's a repair that it's not going to recur. It takes care of itself. And yet, what happened? But he goes in through OTAs and reports soreness in his shoulder and in the same shoulder that he had the surgery, and here he is. And that is a calculated risk that you take of deciding whether or not to go through with that or not. The Colts are the ones, not me, not John, not Kevin, not Chap, not Holder. The Colts are the ones that had stated that the reason they elected to go to the surgery with Anthony Richardson on that shoulder is it was their belief that that was going to be a fix-all procedure. And maybe it still is. I don't know. And I'm not accusing them by any stretch. I mean, they truly believed that, right? That's why they did that. But if the shoulder is again sore, then you say to yourself, okay, does that mean that we did a repair to the engine when we should have just gone out and gotten a new car? And that's where they are. And if he is not, the problem now is if Anthony Richardson is not able to go through, if it comes to, whether it be mini camp or then training camp, I don't think that they're talking about that of yet, but you can't rule anything out at this point, right? If he can't go through training camp, that's an issue because they now have a veteran that plays a similar style, may not be the long arm, but that is there and is, what's the best ability? Availability. And right now, Richardson has not shown a consistency of either.
Now, here's the thing, Jake. Is Daniel Jones like that person who's got multiple cars, and let's say it's a new BMW and it's got a newer BMW, it's only got like a few thousand miles on it? Is that Daniel Jones, or is he? No, I'm saying is like
I get what you're saying.
Take him to a new place and it becomes the car that you hoped it could be, whatever.
I think, I don't know that he's Alex Smith per se, but I think Daniel Jones, you're hoping that he is a nice, solid Honda Accord, right? Which is perfectly reliable to get you to the store and back and get you to work, and it's going to run for a long time. I don't know necessarily that it's one that's going to win you the race, but it's a nice, safe, reliable car. Tony East joining us now, and I'm sure thrilled to be doing so after that entire little monologue. He is on the Rhinegeist Brewery guest line. Keep in mind, Rhinegeist Brewery, distributed by Zinc Distributing here in town, out of Cincinnati, but fabulous beer you can find around the Indianapolis area. Tony, tonight, game one, Pacers Thunder. Is there any sort of a storyline that has developed through this before we even tip off that maybe is not one that you anticipated when it was a foregone conclusion this was going to be the matchup?
Yeah, the storyline is that as a former Honda Accord owner, I did not enjoy this introduction very much.
Honda Accords are fabulous automobiles. That's my point, right? They are very reliable. They're not. What I mean is they're not flashy, right? They're not flashy,
yes,
but they are very, very reliable.
Being here, I am surprised how much the underdog angle has kind of appeared out of not nowhere. Rick Carlisle's been banging that drum after a lot of wins for the Pacers that they haven't been the favorites. But it's coming from both teams, like OKC with the, no one believed in these players before, and that's how they all got to where they are. And it's kind of a theme for the Pacers too. And I get why that's the case. Like when you get to the finals, you think a lot about all the people that you've proved wrong at some point, or, it's like proof that you are as good as you would at one point say you would be. But I've been surprised the extent that that's taken a grip on these finals is just how much these players, these franchises, these teams are taking on the no one believed in us at some point mentality, when both teams have been, in the Thunder's case all season and for the Pacers' case in January, quite good for a pretty good amount of time.
Tony, you are in Oklahoma City, correct?
Yes, I was going to ask you if you have any. I'm sure you have attraction recommendations or food recommendations.
You know what? I've never been to Oklahoma City. I've been
Wow.
to Oklahoma, never been to Oklahoma City. I know they have a Cowboy Hall of Fame.
We went to the Banjo Museum last night.
The Banjo Museum.
Yes.
Did you have to pull a couple strings to get in, or was it pretty easy to get there?
No, you walk up 3 steps and you're in.
Don't laugh at that. That was horrible.
That was pretty. That was not bad, was it?
That
Not
was
bad.
bad.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, how was the Banjo Museum?
It was cute. It was adorable. It was very fun.
It was cute and adorable.
Is that not the selling point you were hoping for?
Yeah, that's it. How big is the Banjo Museum?
Oh, it's very tiny. It is extremely small. It's like I can't even describe it. It's like the size of like a jeweler, basically.
You know there is I say museum. I know it's museum. There's a spam museum. Did you know that in Minnesota?
No.
Yeah,
I did not know
and
that.
I told a buddy of mine. Honestly, there really is, and I'm a fan of spam. I used to eat it a lot as a kid, and then I found out there's a museum for it. And the only thing that I gave it, the only advice I can give if you go to it, don't give them your email address when you go in. That's all I can tell you. But anyway, so Tony, I'm curious of this though. In Oklahoma City, what is the pulse there? What is just in is it a nervous energy with fans there? Is it excitement? Is there a respect of Indiana? Is it a foregone conclusion? What is the pulse in Oklahoma City?
I think there's a tie-in of respect and confidence. I think that they realize that the Pacers play a certain way that actually could stress out the Thunder and the things that they're good at, while at the same time, I think there's a lot of acknowledgement here and around the Thunder in general that the Denver series test that they went through, it was really significant for them, and that they solved a lot of playoff problems, right? They had to go against a super creator and funky defenses and all sorts of unique things. It's a battle-tested championship team, and learn a lot about how to handle those situations and what to do in that kind of moment. And they did a great job. They won the series, obviously, and I think that was a big turning point for OKC to feel good about, their experience level in the postseason. That's the round they lost in the year before, right? So that's been brought up a lot to me the last couple of days, is that they rolled through Minnesota after doing that. Is even if you think the Pacers are stylistically challenging for the Thunder for whatever reason, they feel very much more like a team that can win, deserves to be here, and can find solutions, not only like tactically, but mentally, with the experience they got by having to go through Jokic in that series.
Do you, if you are Indiana, Tony, we've talked a little bit about this. I'm curious your thought after having talked to them, right, and been around it a little bit. For Indiana, do you think that the Pacers and Rick Carlisle, who has been masterful in this postseason and run circles around some of the coaches that he's gone up against, does Indiana continue to come up with evolution of what they do, or are we past that now? Is it, hey, this is what we do, we're pushing those chips in, and we hope that works?
Yeah, it's an interesting combo of both in that, I think I've said to you almost every week I come on that a key to their next game is being themselves, because every time they lose in the playoffs, we can all see it. They play too slow. They're not moving the ball as well as they usually do. Some one-on-ones can't get in the paint. The passing's not as crisp. And then after the game, the Pacers take the podium and they tell us exactly that. We played too slow. We didn't move the ball. We weren't able to get the shots we like. And then the very next game, they fix it and they do it. So on one hand, it's like, just do what you do. You've set your identity. You can win. On the other hand, we heard Tyrese Halliburton a couple weeks ago make the joke that some people on the Pacers roster have a running joke that Carlisle adds a new play every day, right? And so I think that that's part of what makes him so adaptable as a coach, is he's always thinking about the next thing or the next evolution of something that they already do. And, I put the video up of everybody being excited about the play they had in the first play of the Knicks game. Aaron Nesmith got a wide open layup, right? Like, that's a big part of what they do too, is they have that kind of creativity and respect for new strategy, and it's helped them evolve throughout the playoffs. So I think it's a little bit of both. And OKC is just such a test. There's so many excellent individual defenders that, they kind of have to keep evolving, but they can't get away from their identity in doing so. I've seen some suggestion to slow it down because OKC also plays fast. I think they absolutely cannot do that. They need to keep their speed.
What did Denver do? Tony East is our guest. He's on the Ryan Gus Brewery guest line, of course, with Forbes, also Locked On Pacers, Tony R. East on the X-Post Twitter. Tony, what did Denver do in particular? And I don't know how much you watched of that series, but maybe in talking to or analyzing this one, Denver took Oklahoma City to 7 games. What were they able to do or manipulate about Oklahoma City to get themselves 3 wins?
They just had, with Jokic specifically, they have a ball-dominant guy who can attract the pressure and attention that OKC defense loves to provide, right? They're going to overload the strongest side. They're going to send 2 towards the ball at times. And they had a guy who could actually see that coverage and beat it with good passing, with tact, take his time, not turn it over. And then you saw Anthony Edwards the very next round have 7 turnovers every game, and they couldn't move the ball well enough. They couldn't generate shots they want throughout a game. And that's what made Denver possible. Even though they're not even a high 3-point volume team, and that's a critical thing against the Thunder is generating corner threes, the Nuggets were still able to keep possessions going and get a shot they liked eventually. That's something that the Pacers have to feel a little confident in, is that they're such a low turnover team by design that they might be able to keep themselves a chance to have extra possessions. And Denver did a great job with that. They were in a lot of games. They were all close games, but they found a way to win. And the Pacers have been great in the clutch too. So I think that is something they can take away from that series, even though the Thunder have learned a lot of lessons about, staying poised on defense and how to survive a tough series like that.
By the way, somebody told me that Cattleman's in Oklahoma City is really good. Now,
Cattleman's? Okay,
isn't Cattleman's like a chain? Isn't that like isn't that like a Texas Roadhouse type deal?
You are asking the wrong guy.
Okay, here we go. This is not Cattleman's Roadhouse. This is Cattleman's Steakhouse in the historic Stockyard City of Oklahoma City.
Okay.
It has a Western atmosphere. I would think it wouldn't have an Eastern atmosphere, right? It's the oldest running restaurant in Oklahoma.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Opened in 1910.
Jeez. Okay.
There you go.
Cattleman's Steakhouse. Add it to the list.
Now here's the thing. Let me ask you this, Tony. I'm one of these guys. I'm not really, and I obviously love the dinner of a steakhouse, right? But I'm one of these guys, especially when I'm on the road. I don't want my evening to be dinner. I want dinner to be the precursor to my evening. I don't want to go somewhere where I'm there from like 7 until 9:30.
You're speaking my language. Yep.
What's your give me your ideal kind of place, like an In-N-Out place for dinner.
Well, per a recommendation from someone with the Pacers, I went to a place called Fuzzy Tacos last night. Mm-hmm. Have you been to Torchy's before, Jake?
I have been to Torchy's, yes.
Similar, but locale to here. And then after
I'm
that,
a little uncomfortable with the name. I'm not going to lie to you about that.
The food was not fuzzy. I can confirm that.
Okay.
And then they have like a little Riverwalk looking deal in Bricktown that was right by the adorable, as I coined it, Banjo Museum. So there was actually stuff to do around it. So you would do the dinner and do stuff.
I ask this sincerely because we live in a city that I think a lot of people, when they think Indianapolis, they think Indian Place, Naptown, all of that. Now, that has changed a lot in the last 30 years. But certainly around the time that Circle Center Mall opened in the early to mid-'90s, and the Pacers were a big part of this, and then the Colts rise, sports were a big part of the growth of Indianapolis. But people that would come here would always say, there was more to do there than I thought. It was great. It was walkable, etc. Can you give for us, for those that have never been, just kind of, you did it a little bit there, but is Oklahoma City, in fact, a little bit cooler place than one would guess?
It's like a little bit smaller Indy, honestly. Like they have a little more, basically like if Fountain Square was right next to downtown, that's what Bricktown is.
Okay.
They don't have quite as many tall buildings. The ones they do are a tiny bit more spread out. So when you're actually downtown, it feels a little smaller, but honestly, largely it feels very similar. I was talking to somebody last night. Maybe it's just where I've been. So people who've been here a lot will be like, what are you talking about? It felt very clean. Like it's very clean downtown. It's really interesting. I need to explore more, and I'll have a lot of time to do it with all these gaps between games.
Well, the I hate to say this, the cleanliness might also be because lately you've been in downtown Indianapolis a lot, right? I mean, we got some work to do here. There's no question about that. But that's a whole different talk show, different station probably. Tony East, our guest. All right, Tony. Lastly, I want to ask you this: if you were to look at the Pacers, is there somebody right now? This is an odd way of asking it, but is there a player for the Pacers that has been marquee in the postseason for them that you worry if midnight is about to strike? Is there anybody that seemingly has been playing above the reality of who typically they are, and there's the possibility of a letdown there that will hurt Indiana?
I mean, Aaron Neesmith's just been hot from three, so that's always just like, in theory, that could end. And Andrew Nembhard finally had that happen last round, right? So there's not anybody that I think just straight up percentages that could just end besides those two. Like, nobody's been so unusually warm that I think they'll be screwed if there's another series that could make the clock strike midnight. I do wonder about the Pacers bench in this series. Like, they've had lots of guys who have had really great postseason games here or there where they've been really hot or really cold at certain times. And I wonder if that's going to hold up in this series. The Thunder depth in defense is really good. Like, the bench is going to have to be very good for the Pacers in the series. Toppin's had some nice games. Thomas Bryant just had the game of his life. T.J. McConnell's been very boomer bust. I wonder if those guys are going to be able to be consistent in this series. But outside of just like general three-point shooting hotness or aggression from those two starters on the wing, I'm not sure anyone super fits that bill. But the problem is both of those guys are very important in this series. So if they're not hitting, it's going to be tough.
Tony, of course, you host Locked On Pacers, and I heard you had a very insightful, quite handsome guest on your latest episode that dropped Wednesday. You two talked about the advantages that the Pacers have against the Thunder. Can you kind of recap at least what you believe that the Pacers have an advantage in against OKC?
Yeah, they're going to have to be finding those corner threes because that's something the Thunder love to give up with the way they play defense. My handsome guest that you described was very astute to say that the Pacers might have more shot creators than the Thunder, so the sheer depth of those could eventually lead to some sort of advantages and breakdowns, and the depth could be a thing for the Pacers. And the one we haven't talked about here, Rick Carlisle, been there, done that, has pulled off a big upset on this stage before. Not that Mark Daigneault's a bad coach. He's excellent, but the experience advantage certainly tips Pacers in that way.
I'm looking, by the way, at not that I'm not fascinated with who your handsome guest was. Did he have a large head, just out of curiosity?
Oh, I have a large head as well, so I don't know who you're referring to there.
Okay.
Two regular Peyton Mannings on this show.
That's
yes.
right. Okay, I'm looking at things to do in Oklahoma City. You ready? Let me give you a couple, and you tell me if this would wet the whistle of one Tony East, right?
Okay.
Although I'm not sure if you're allowed in that one restaurant if it's Western atmosphere, if they're allowed in Tony East. I don't know. Okay, National Cowboy and Western Heritage Museum. I mentioned that, right?
Yes. I've seen that where it is, but I have not been there yet.
Okay. The Museum of, I hope I'm saying this correctly, Osteology. Is that right?
Ooh, okay.
Are we familiar with what that? A unique spot for educational exhibits of 300-plus skeletons of many species plus hand-on displays.
Wow. Okay.
So it's just like skeletons of, like mastodons and stuff.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay. Interesting that that's here.
The First Americans Museum.
Oh, okay. That does make sense to be here, unlike the last one. Got it.
Okay. Visitors say this museum offers a wealth of information about Native American history and culture through engaging exhibits. That's kind of cool, right?
Yeah, I like that.
Okay, and then let's see here. I'm looking the Oklahoma State Capitol. I have a weird thing where I like to see the state capitol of every state, so you have that opportunity, right?
Got it, yes.
Okay, here's one. The Oklahoma Railway Museum.
Wow. That one actually does sound interesting to me.
Restored locomotives, a 19th century depot, and memorabilia displays, plus seasonal train rides. You can take a train ride.
Oh, there you go.
I mean,
Does it have anything about the Paycom Center on there?
It does, actually. Thank you for asking.
Good.
Do you need more information on that, or would you like for me to go ahead and give you a brief tutorial?
I think I'll let you know next week.
Okay. Paycom Center. I'm looking at it right now. It says, fans say this arena hosts exciting Thunder games and concerts. Also, the possibility where you could see the Indiana Pacers win the NBA finals if they go to 7 games. It's very exciting,
5,
right?
if you're very confident.
So
5.
So we've got a cowboy museum, a banjo museum, and so that means there's a lot of
Yeehaw.
Look at that.
yeehaws.
Look at you. All right, Tony. What's the weather in Oklahoma City, by the way?
75, but very sunny. It's very nice. It's beautiful.
See,
today.
again, no thunder in the forecast. I'm telling you.
Ooh,
There you go.
Look at that.
All right, Tony. Appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon. All
You got
right.
it. Yep. See you next week, guys.
All right, Tony East joining us on the Rhinegeist Brewery guest line. Good stuff.
So 75 and sunny in Oklahoma City, Jake. Sounds awfully like San Diego weather.
I don't know if you know this or not. It's like that in San Diego 363 days a year, Eddie.
I know.
That's why everyone lives there. Have you been to San Diego?
I have indeed. We've been over this. I went there at my senior year of high school back in 2017.
For what reason did you go? Was this a senior trip?
Kind of. So I grew up. My best friend growing up moved out there because of his dad's work.
Okay.
And he had family out there on the West Coast, so they moved out there.
What an upgrade!
In after middle school, so he was out there for high school, and then figured why not go out there, get together, celebrate us graduating our senior years of high school, and so we went out there, had a great time.
I mean, San Diego's great.
If it was sunny outside here in Indy, then we could say the same thing, but it's 73 and cloudy.
But no, I'm telling you, no thunder in the forecast.
That's right.
That's the big thing. No thunder in the forecast. All right, if you are just joining the program, let me recap for you what we have gone over today. Obviously, we have talked about the fact that the Pacers and Oklahoma City Thunder get underway tonight, and you don't know how many chances you're going to get. And I'm excited about it. I'm not even nervous about it. I mean, a lot of times with sports, I get nervous, and I have mentioned before, it's been a long time since I've allowed myself to get emotionally involved with sports. Because you get programmed with what we do for a living to see it almost like antiseptically and analytically. And it takes away, I'll be honest, several years ago, I was going to a Colts game. I was doing the pregame show at the Slippery Noodle. And I parked downtown, and there were a group of guys that were asking if they could have the spot where I parked because they were bringing a big bus to tailgate. And I'm like, look, I mean, I don't know. There's no other spots. I don't know what to tell you. And they were like, oh, okay. Well, I guess you get to go to the game for free and da-da-da. And they were good dudes, but we went back and forth on it. And I walked away and I envied them. Envied's maybe the wrong word, but forever, I have always said I didn't know what it was like to go to a game and drink a beer and have a hot dog and high-five people in the crowd. Not that I couldn't do that, but in big moments, if it was the Colts, the Pacers, whatever it was, I was always working as a credentialed media member. And we are extremely, extremely fortunate to have that access and go to those games, and that's not lost on me. But the only cost that it comes with is that I've never been able to be what I was as a kid growing up as a sports nut and be able to completely embrace my fandom. And for the Pacers and for this franchise and for this city, I have wanted so badly to see the Pacers win an NBA title, but I think I almost just was resigned to the fact that it was probably never going to happen because of the way the NBA was set up and everything else. And yes, I am extremely fortunate, having nothing to do with me. Again, I've had a lot of good luck that, I'm able to go to each and every game because Shannon has season tickets. I do not, but she does. And so I'm very fortunate in that regard. And with that, that has introduced me to or reinvigorated the, standing up and actually cheering or getting, tight at the end of a game or wondering what's going to happen and that kind of a thing. It's the first time in a long time that I've been able to feel that again, and I'm thankful for this franchise and this team for being able to do that. And I want so badly to see this happen, not only for all of those reasons, but also for this city in general, because you just don't know how many chances you're going to get. And there are multiple sports franchises that you can look towards that probably at some point thought they were entering into an era or a dynasty or in the introduction of repeated cracks at the whip. And the Colts got one Super Bowl when many people thought it was going to be the first of many. The Bucks won an NBA title with Giannis. Probably thought they were going to get many. On and on and on. The Cavaliers won one with LeBron James. The time is now. The time is now. And I'm all in. That's why tonight at our, fan NBA Finals viewing party from Mick Ultra Zero at Ale and Fisher's. I'm psyched for it. I'm pumped up, and I'm nervous, and I love it. But if you're just joining us, we talked about that. We talked about the fact the Edmonton Oilers won Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Final, and they have a connection to Indianapolis. And the other big news, big news, maybe it's just a blip, but maybe it's a bigger story that's going to have a shelf life beyond the next couple of weeks. And it involves the other team in town. And we'll get back to it next. You know, Eddie has not seen, as a matter of fact, I almost would like for Eddie to mute my microphone, which he probably does anyway. Not for Eddie. I mean, not for the audience, but for Eddie. In other words, like for Eddie to mute his headphones, I guess is a better way of saying it, so he doesn't hear what I'm about to say, because I'm going to give a spoiler alert for a movie that Eddie has not seen. Although I don't think it gives away any sort of plot line or twist to the movie. But one of the greatest movies of our era, I think almost indisputably, is The Shawshank Redemption. And the tagline of The Shawshank Redemption, the line that's used in the movie, posters, promotion, is, hope is a good thing, maybe the best of things. And there's a lot of truth to that. And hope can get you through a lot of things. Hope can get you through difficult times as a person. Hope can get you through difficult times in a relationship or with a job search or any sort of thing where life isn't going your way. But hope isn't a very good strategy towards building a football roster. Sure, you hope that your team does well. And sure, you hope that draft picks pan out. But if you are drafting the cornerstone of your franchise and a large part of it working out is the hope that your speculation can come to fruition, more often than not, that's a recipe for a failure. Because you draft more often than not players that you not are, and yes, it's okay to take your shot, and sometimes you do that based on intrigue. But you can draft a Jonathan Bender that you are convinced is the next Kevin Durant, and without injury might have been. You can draft him and store him away a little bit if you already have Reggie Miller and, Rick Smits and Jalen Rose and other players that you are going to ride with while you allow that to grow. You afford yourself the opportunity. You can draft players that you maybe are taking a flyer on if it's round 4. And if it pans out and it works out, then awesome. And if it doesn't, it's kind of like no harm, no foul. Anthony Richardson is a player that the Colts have hope towards. They have conjecture about what he can be. And if you think about the year that he came out and the quarterbacks that were available, C.J. Stroud and Bryce Young and Will Levis. Now, Will Levis, I think you can safely say now probably is never going to pan out as a starting quarterback in the NFL, but that's why he was not one that franchises decided to take in that top 10 area.
Parfum de mayonnaise.
That might be his, and that is so horrific, by the way. But, Bryce Young's starting to play a little bit.
Like greatness.
And smell like second city somewhere, right? Eventually. But for Anthony Richardson, it's always been about hope. And I hope he does well. I told you when I watched the video that I saw, there was a documentary that was done following 3 marquee quarterbacks that were blue chip high school recruits to see and show their recruiting process. Bryce Young was one of them. The other one was a kid that went to Iowa that was from Texas that was a journeyman college player, and Anthony Richardson was one. And when I watched that documentary that was done, it illuminated for me a lot of things of why I wanted him to do well. And there was an underdog nature to it because he did not grow up with the resources that a Bryce Young did. Bryce Young was at like a football academy high school, had, a quarterback's coach, an offensive coordinator, a tight ends coach. Anthony Richardson had 4 guys that were just trying to help keep kids on the straight and narrow and, really good guys and had teammates that, they didn't have a lot of resources. They missed practice one day because it was raining too hard and they didn't have anywhere to go indoors. things like that. He did not grow up with a lot of, I'm not saying like totally impoverished. I'm just saying the school that he went to did not put resources into or have the facilities towards football like other quarterbacks would. But he was so physically gifted that he kept getting opportunity even though he wasn't ready for it yet. And in terms of his in watching the guys that were working with him he's saying in practice in this documentary when he's 17 years old, he's like, man, I've overthrown like 10 straight passes. I'm like, well, just keep working at it. They didn't show him footwork and rotation and things like that. He just didn't have those things. Then he gets to Florida, and I think that his athleticism and his God-given natural talent in terms of his physique alone allowed him to rely on that and get away from some of the fundamentals and you can play without fundamentals in most levels of sport until you get to the absolute very top pinnacle of it, which is the National Football League. And then you better have more than just athleticism. And now with Richardson, the Colts have continued to work on hope. And part of that hope is that he can stay healthy. And when he had the shoulder injury, the sprain, and they elected to have surgery on it, they said they're going to do this surgery and shut him down because they believed that this surgery would forever take care of the problem, and it was better to get rid of that problem now and suffer through that time period than to have to keep going back to the well of injury. And that cost him valuable time in terms of his formidable years as an NFL player, and it cost him reps and it cost him a lot in terms of workouts. But it was all going to be okay because it was going to be a one-stop problem fixed. And it didn't do it. That's what we now know is it didn't do it. Because here we are, if you're just joining us, Shane Steichen announcing earlier today that after OTAs, non-rigorous and by all account, non-heavy contact OTAs, by throwing the football around and doing so extensively, Anthony Richardson has pain in his shoulder that is going to cause them to shelf him for minicamp and then go from there. And it is very, very hard to believe that this is not going to be something that is going to continue to recur, even if he's able to play through it. Does it alter his motion? Does it psychologically factor in on how hard he pushes? And it feels like you're back once again to nothing more than hope. And hope is a good thing, sometimes the best of things, unless you're using it to try to parlay the success of your franchise, in which case hope becomes a figment of your imagination to a great extent, because the quarterbacks that you see playing and succeeding in the NFL more often than not, what your hope is that they continue the proof of their work, because you have reason to believe coming in and tangible evidence that they physically can be a player. And the only physicality about Anthony Richardson didn't have anything to do with his ability as a player, but rather as an athlete, but not necessarily a quarterback. And you have to wonder if the final sands of the hourglass aren't running through. Eddie, you were just involved in the Expos Twitter, an interesting conversation
I was.
with our friend Brandon Cole
I was.
regarding one of your theories, not theories, I guess, but something that certainly has to be explored about Anthony Richardson. And I do understand this thought process.
So Brandon tweeted at us, you at Jake Query, me at Eddie Garrison _, and the show Twitter at Query _company. With the question, is it just possible that Richardson is just kind of weak when it comes to injuries? More or less the slightest tweak and he stops. I mean, this was in no contact practice. My reply was, Jake, I remember last year when we were having these discussions, it started around, the time of the whole tap out and him missing practices and games and whatever because of minor injuries or whatever, and him needing to be close to 100% in order to play. It started, spitballing the idea that maybe he's just not mentally tough enough to play in the NFL to play through things because everyone's always banged up with something. And that's just kind of another thing in my head right now is like, I get it's an injury to your throwing shoulder, but you're competing for your job security and your NFL career right now. Like, it's got to be serious. And what are you doing, whether it's off the field or on the field, that led to this? Because you're not getting hit. The only way for you to potentially re-aggravate an AC joint sprain is if you fall on it wrong or you get hit wrong. So there's got to be something to that.
I do think that there are some players that just naturally, they are more conditioned to handle pain, etc., than others. I have super sensitive sinuses. I eat the mustard at the Rathskeller, which I like, but I mean, it hits me like a ton of bricks, and other people are like, yeah, okay.
It's pretty good. I'm not a mustard guy.
I can't remember. Didn't I? Where was it?
You brought it in.
But there was one time I picked up a batch of it, and it was like not the regular batch. And I gave it to somebody, and they're like, yeah, it's okay. And I'm like, wait a minute. And then I tried it. I'm like, oh, that's total. I knew who it was. My buddy Ron Green, we were at the Rathskeller to go see the elect, and I got some of the mustard for him, and he was totally unfazed by it. And then I went, and they're like, oh, yeah, no, we're out of the regular stuff. I'm like, well, no wonder. Now, can I bring up what you brought up to me a moment ago that I find curious, Eddie?
Does it pertain to the Colts
Yes.
front office? Yeah.
If you recall, when the Colts drafted Anthony Richardson, at the time that they drafted Anthony Richardson, their chief personnel executive was Morocco Brown. As a matter of fact, Morocco Brown was elevated to chief personnel executive in June of 2022. And he is the exec or the player personnel executive that did probably the most advanced scouting and in-depth scouting of Anthony Richardson. At the time that Anthony Richardson was drafted, it was reported that he went almost weekly to Florida, that he was watching him well ahead of perhaps even when they knew that he, where exactly they would be drafting. I mean, he was a very, very strong advocate of Anthony Richardson. Talked about his work ethic, his potential, his athleticism, all of the things that obviously, and I'm not saying the Colts were isolated in their intrigue of Anthony Richardson, but Morocco Brown, I think, even at the time that he was drafted, he was the executive for the Colts.
He was the director of college scouting.
He was most commonly linked to Richardson, right?
Mm-hmm. Like, if you go back and watch after they draft Richardson, I don't know if it was still technically with the next pick or if it was behind the Colts. He was the primary face and voice that you saw when it came to talking about Anthony and the traits and the things that he brings to the table and how much he enjoyed. He even went back as far as high school, Morocco did, in terms of how long he's been following Anthony Richardson, and went as far as to say on the record, on camera, that they probably would have taken him first overall if they had the number one pick.
And by the time he was drafted, he had been elevated to the executive role. But what's interesting is I'm looking right now at, and I don't want to inaccurately report this, but I got curious and I'm looking at on the Colts website the listing of their executives. And under coaching staff, under list of executives, under player personnel, director of player personnel, director of pro personnel, director of college scouting, assistant director of college scouting, senior player personnel scout, all the way down the website, the name that I no longer see as being a part of the Colts according to their website, unless I'm overlooking it, is Morocco Brown, who was probably the most vociferous and the biggest advocate of the drafting of Anthony Richardson. I have no idea if there's a connection there, but it certainly is interesting. And it does feel more and more to me like, especially if Richardson is not able to go in camp and the injury that we were told the surgery was going to permanently, not permanently, but most likely erase a future possibility of complication. And now it's back again with Shane Steichen saying that he will not go through minicamp and they will continue to wait to see with the pain in the shoulder of Anthony Richardson. That's problematic. And I don't wish any ill will on Anthony Richardson. I don't think anybody does. Seems like a guy that you absolutely would want to root for. There's nothing about him other than the tap out, which I think was naivete. I don't think that was arrogance. I think it was just naivete. But other than that, you have to wonder, especially with Daniel Jones coming in and the price tag they gave him, if this is not, in fact, the beginning of the end with that in terms of his time in Indianapolis. We'll go to Oklahoma City. Pacers Thunder tonight. Game 1, NBA Finals, viewing party. Ale Emporium, Fishers, Mick Ultra Zero, Zinc Distributing helping us out. JMV is going to be broadcasting live there. And what will we see in the series? We'll talk to the guy that knows Oklahoma City as well as anybody. Their television play-by-play voice, Chris Fisher, joins us next. time is now. You know, it's funny to think that Oklahoma City, they've been in this, not this particular group, but the city of Oklahoma City has been through this before with the NBA Finals, but it is now upon us. Game 1 tonight, 8:30, things get underway. And do we have Chris Eddy? Chris Fisher is the television play-by-play voice of the Oklahoma City Thunder. He joins us on the Ryan Geist Brewery guest line. Chris, I want to get this odd question, and I appreciate your time today. I know in Indiana, the television network that broadcasts the Pacers has changed a few times. That's not necessarily uniform across the league. So I want to make sure that I say it properly. I'll give you the opportunity to do so. The television network that you work for that airs Oklahoma City Thunder games is which?
Well, we were formerly Valley Sports, and I think just like Indiana, we just transitioned to FanDuel Sports Network.
Okay, I wanted to make I wanted to make sure I was saying it right because I know that that changes a little bit, so I didn't want to misstate it. So thank you for the clarification. First off, appreciate you coming on. Let's begin with this. The thought process from the Indiana side is that this is a little bit like the Spider-Man gif of two franchises, two markets really, that are very similar in the way that they've been built, the salary structures, etc., but also in the playing style itself. Now, is that taking an easy narrative, or is there some legitimacy to that?
I mean, I think that there's some legitimacy to that in the sense that actually when I'm looking at these two teams, they both really want to play fast. They both have proven to play fast, not only in the regular season, but in the postseason. Thunder number 2 in pace, Indiana's number 3 in pace. They were both top 10 in the regular season. They want to get up the floor. I think that's been evident with Indiana, particularly in the success that they had against the New York Knicks and just how their offense flows. I mean, there were countless times where New York would make a bucket, and within the next 5 seconds, you got Indiana on the other end answering right back and getting some points. And I think that's something that's going to be a huge factor. But also, I remember back in Game 2 between the Thunder and the Pacers in the regular season, the game in Oklahoma City, and one thing that really stood out to me is it wasn't just the Thunder turnovers that kind of switched that game in the second quarter and the third quarter, but it was the Thunder playing quickly and getting up and down the floor. And I think that was a huge component that favored OKC surprisingly. But from that standpoint, I think that there's some similarities to your other point about these two teams being built the right way and being built similarly. I think that there's a lot to that, just given the fact that they're small market teams, and there's very few ways for small market teams within the NBA structure historically to build out rosters. And you've got limited avenues, and both of these teams have maximized those avenues, whether that's through the draft or through trades, not necessarily big ticket trades, but more under the radar trades that have ended up having tremendous amounts of impact. But they've maximized those avenues, and clearly it's paying off. And I think that it's tremendous for the NBA. And, we've all kind of seen how these two teams have been marketed over the years, or lack thereof. And the fact that they're here meeting in the finals, I think, is great for the NBA. It's great for the league. It's what most casual fans have been clamoring for over the last couple of decades. And here we have a great matchup with two teams that I can't wait to watch go at it.
Okay, Chris, let's begin with, breaking down kind of Oklahoma City and you giving us a little more perspective on them. You obviously saw them all year. That goes without saying. This is a near historic level team in terms of their wins, 68 wins. They were dynamic at home. They went 7 games with Denver. Now, did that offer any sort of insight or blueprint as to something that Indiana could perhaps exploit? What did Denver do to take Oak City to the limit that Indiana can try to tap into?
There were some interesting things in that series. The way that Denver played defensively gave the Thunder some problems just in their zone. And interestingly enough, it's not something that OKC hadn't seen over the course of the season. SGA and company, they've seen a lot of different defenses in just trying to slow him down, and slow the Thunder offense down. But it gave them problems in the playoffs in terms of having gap shut-offs, avenues to the rim. The Thunder are a drive-heavy team. They want to get to the cup, led by SGA, and he's obviously the primary distributor, but it's not just him. It's Jalen Williams. Chet Holmgren off the catch can drive and get to the rim. Wiggins, Wallace. And so some of those avenues were being cut off by Denver, and it didn't really come together for the Thunder until kind of later in the series, and they were able to kind of figure it out. They put Caruso, they put Chet Holmgren in that soft pocket in the middle of the floor to where they could either catch, shoot, or distribute it back out to the perimeter, and it ended up kind of being a little bit of an issue for the Denver defense. And part of that series too, Denver with Jokic, they're just so potent offensively.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say part of what Denver does is they roll out Jokic, right? that helps, right?
He's just. I'm telling you right now, he's just impossible to guard. You just cannot guard him, and and that's not just for us. And being a historic defensive team, he's just impossible to slow down. He's going to get his, and he's such an incredible, talented playmaker. And they've got guys who can make shots. And then Jamal Murray's game just goes to a whole other level. He doesn't get enough credit for the type of player that he is because he's not an all-star in the regular season, but in the postseason, he's just unbelievable. He goes to a whole other level. And they're just a really good matchup. They were battle-tested. And I think for the Thunder, getting past that was huge psychologically because they lost in the second round last year to Dallas. And that might have been in the back of their head. But also they're a really young team still. And, yes, they went 68 and 12. They're still a very young team and are kind of going through some of these experiences together. And they're a better team now than they were going into that Denver series. They're a better team now than they were going into the Minnesota series because, I mean, they're the youngest team to get to the finals since the 70s. And, even though they've been the 1 seed now for 2 consecutive years, they got a lot of guys who have limited playoff experience, and they're still trying to figure it out on the fly. And so it's going to be interesting to see these two teams who haven't been in the finals before go at it.
That is the voice of Chris Fisher. He is, to put it in Indiana terms, the Chris Denari, if you will, of the Oklahoma City Thunder. He is the television play-by-play voice on the FanDuel Sports Network in Oklahoma City, talking about tonight's game number 1. He's on the Rhinegeist Brewery guest line. Chris, the defense of Oklahoma City is so good. I mean, it is historically good. Is there a pocket of vulnerability within it? Is there an area where they are soft defensively that Indiana's organized, chaotic offense can exploit?
That's a good question. Now, if I did know if there was a weakness, do you think I would tell you? No, I'm just kidding. I think that they are really, really good. I thought Anthony Edwards had an interesting comment after the Western Conference Finals, and he just said, "Look, they're 15 players, 15 puppets, 1 string," and that's not a knock. It's a compliment.
Yeah, that is. I mean, that speaks to like a team concept, right? Of defense. Of you can't attack one area, right?
Correct. No, these guys are as connected as any unit in the NBA, not just this year, but the numbers back it up. It's an historic defense, and they have just played so connected all season long. The help is always in the right place. But the thing that stands out to me is that they've got all these unique defenders who are really good defenders, but they all bring a little something different. And what that means, like Lou Dort is an incredible on-ball defender. First team all-defensive player this year. He's going to be matched up against the opposing team's best player night after night after night. You've got Jalen Williams, who can size up. He can size down. He can pretty much play anywhere on the floor. He can guard on the ball. He can guard off the ball. Incredibly versatile, but another really good defender. And then you've got a guy like SGA, who is a really good defender, but particularly good on the help side and at anticipating passes, getting in the passing lane, clogging up gaps, using his length. And then you've got a guy like Alex Caruso, who's just an all-around defensive ace. And you put all of these guys together on the floor, and this is the kind of defense that you get. You back it up with a good shot blocker, rim protector like Chet Holmgren, and another defensive deterrent in Isaiah Hartenstein, and then you put in the connectivity between them all, and this is the kind of defense that you get. I think that the addition of Alex Caruso has been tremendous this year, just given his championship caliber experience with the Lakers in 2020. But what we've learned from him is his willingness to communicate and how important the communication has been for them. He is nonstop, whether he's on the bench, whether he's on the floor. He is an extension of the coaching staff out there. And I think he's actually really helped the coaching staff with how good he's been, because he's always said, look, I've played with really great players over the years, whether that's LeBron or whoever, and have really tried to pick up some of those important pieces, and communication is always the most important one. So I think that he's brought that to this Thunder defense, but they just throw waves and waves and waves of on-ball defenders out on the perimeter. I mean, it's a perimeter game, and so sometimes it might not be Lou, but it could be Caruso, it could be Cason Wallace, it could be J-Dub, it could be Aaron Wiggins. It just doesn't matter. Mark Daigneault is going to rotate those guys depending on the matchup, and it wears opposing teams down. There's no doubt about it.
Chris, one of the things I talked about, and I want your perspective on this, in Indianapolis, in the Indianapolis 500, I've made this reference on our show several times, but to give you the baseline here, the Indy 500 and the Kentucky Derby both take place in the month of May. Both of the events begin with songs that are played that are indigenous and about the respective areas. My old Kentucky home and back home again in Indiana. And I've always said that people in Louisville and people in Indianapolis have a reciprocal respect of the two events because we understand what it means to the other side, maybe even more so than other markets that are watching it from the outside. Is there an element of that same reciprocal respect within this NBA Finals matchup, in the fact that, yes, of course, fans of Indiana are not going to like the Oklahoma City Thunder here for the next 2 weeks. And, of course, fans want the Pacers to win it and vice versa. But it seems to me that there is this level of, but at the same time, a feeling of calm of knowing that a franchise that represents exactly the same values and build process and obstacles is the one that you're going up against here, and that all is right with the basketball world, that the Pacers of the West are the team that they're playing. It feels that way here. Is that in any way, shape, or form reciprocated in the emotion of Oklahoma City?
Yeah, that's an interesting point and an interesting question. I don't think I ever really considered it that way, but I do think that there is an understanding and certainly a psychological undercurrent that, yes, these two organizations, these two cities, the fan bases are aligning in a lot of ways. They're cut from the same cloth. I know for me, the psychological difference after the Thunder had won the Western Conference Finals and sort of waiting to see who they were going to play in the finals between the Knicks and the Pacers, it could not have been more different, one or the other. If you're playing New York, huge market, big time television, Jalen Brunson, Madison Square Garden, that could not be more contrasting to going to Indianapolis, small market team, ever been to the NBA Finals. Tyrese Halliburton, not on national TV a ton. Does America really know about Indiana and the Pacers? Probably not. And so I think that there was a huge difference for me psychologically, and I'm sure that I'm not the only one who felt that way. But in terms of the fan base, I know that if Indiana was playing the Lakers or the Warriors or one of the bigger market teams, you're probably rooting for the small market team in the way that Indiana was built, having done it the right way, like we talked about sooner. And I would hope that that would be the same case for most people rooting for Oklahoma City going up against, say, maybe, the Celtics or something like that. But I really hope that there is an appreciation around the NBA fan base, and even people that are watching casually, that they can appreciate this matchup for what it is. And two non-taxpayer teams going at it for the first time ever since the luxury tax was implemented. I hope that people realize how these teams were built and the work that has been put in over the years in player development and continuity, which I think should matter and is going to matter even more in the NBA. And I hope that they can appreciate it and that the fan embraces it, because I know that there's been a lot of push over the years with LeBron and big markets and big cities, but there's a lot of good NBA out there. There's good teams, there's good fan bases, there's good cities, and hopefully the NBA can embrace that going forward, and hopefully these two teams can be there and be a part of it.
Yeah, it's funny, Chris. Chris Fisher, our guest, the Oklahoma City Thunder play-by-play voice for their television broadcast. It's funny because the Pacers, their lone NBA Finals appearance before this was against the Lakers, and it was
Right.
Kobe and Shaq in that group, and it does feel different, right? Because that was like then you were going into this hornet's nest of media. I think there's an element of, New York and L.A. and Miami might not like seeing Indy and Oak City, and I'm like, okay, well, that's cool. I mean, sit and watch. I'm fine with it. If you don't like it, that's fine. People here and people there are going to love it, right? But lastly, let me ask you this. Your impressions of Indiana, and in talking to the Thunder and being around and watching their practices or talking to them, what do you think is the Thunder's approach to Indiana, and what areas about the Pacers impress you, and what areas do you feel Indiana is vulnerable?
I think that the first thing that comes to mind, and this is something that I just remember in just watching the Pacers and playing the Pacers and seeing them over the course of the last couple of years, they're just relentless. They're absolutely relentless, and they don't stop coming. It doesn't, and I think that really showed up against New York, particularly in the comeback. And that's just kind of how they've been. Offensively, they aren't going anywhere. And no lead is safe, and that offense is potent. And I remember Mark Daigneault vividly saying, when you play a team like Indiana, it really takes game plan discipline. And what I mean by game plan discipline is, and it might sound like a little bit of a cliche, but you have to play 48 minutes. And a team like Indiana can rattle off an 8-0 run, and that can be rattling at times. And you're like, oh, man, they just, in a blink of an eye, put up 8 points, and, an 8-point lead turned into a tie game. But can you stick with the game plan in those difficult times so that 8-0 run doesn't turn into a 16-2 run or, an 18-4 run? Can you stick to the game plan? Can you have the discipline and the mental fortitude to kind of play through it? And with a team like Indiana, that really, really stands out. And then you complement that with the fact that Rick Carlisle, excellent coach, really well respected, always has a good game plan, really, really smart, tactical. He's been an NBA champion before. I know Mark Daigneault, and I know the Thunder coaching staff has a tremendous amount of respect for them and everything that they've been able to do and accomplish here. And so that's something to take into consideration. The Thunder, can they continue to limit Tyrese Halliburton? I know that they really, really try to take away the rim. That's number one priority for the Thunder. Will other guys be able to knock down shots if Tyrese isn't taking shots? But Tyrese, he has averaged 12 points against the Thunder over the last 4 regular season games over the last 2 years, which is the fewest against any opponent in the NBA. He's going to be top of the line, top priority. I'm fascinated to see how the Thunder defend him and the different guys that they throw out. And if you're Indiana, I mean, you've got to hold on to the basketball. It's simple as that. The Thunder, they are going to force turnovers. They're going to try to force turnovers, and when they do, they become virtually unstoppable because they will get out in transition and they will feast, and it can be demoralizing and it can bury teams, and that's what happened over the course of the year. So there's so many different components to this series that are fascinating. But if the Thunder defense turn over Indiana, at least for every single team this year, it has not boded well for the Thunder opponents. And if I'm Indiana, that's probably priority number one: protect the basketball.
Chris, it's going to be a lot of fun, and I know for one of the two cities it will be elation, one of the two cities it will be disappointment. Hopefully these are two franchises that maybe this is the first trip amongst many, but we shall see. Stranger things have happened in the NBA. That's why I keep saying the time is now. You got to go after it, and one of these franchises will win it. But I certainly appreciate the time and the perspective. Enjoy the finals, all right?
Hey, you guys too. Hopefully it's a great series. Enjoy it, and great talking with you. Anytime, enjoy the game tonight. Enjoy the series. And we'll talk soon.
All right, appreciate it. Chris Fisher, our guest, the television play-by-play voice of the Oklahoma City Thunder and FanDuel Sports Oklahoma. Game 1 tonight. Again, the other big story is that of Anthony Richardson and the fact that Anthony Richardson, now we know, somebody pointed this out to me. Richardson has a new throwing motion that comes with using muscles differently. I understand that. I can appreciate that perspective, but that's not how it was reported, though. I mean, Shane Steichen saying outright that, and I'm going to read it directly from our Kevin Bowen, who was at the Colts practices today, or the workouts today. Shane Steichen says Anthony Richardson sustained an injury in his throwing shoulder last week, the same AC joint as his previous injury, an aggravation. He will miss the rest of the spring and will not need surgery. Again, not needing surgery for now. The surgery, though, I think the thing that is alarming, if you will, for the Colts is the fact that this was an injury that the surgery that he had was supposed to eradicate for the future. And it clearly has not done that. If the throw, and Eddie, I'm going to rely on you here because the years all start to run together to me.
Yes, sir.
But I believe this is correct.
How can I assist you, Jake?
The shoulder surgery that Anthony Richardson had in his rookie year, he obviously they brought him back last year, and then he did not have complications over the course of the year, right? I mean, he was benched for the tap out, but the shoulder itself, he did not have complication, correct?
That is accurate.
But now that aggravation of it, or the pain in it in throwing, has again put him on the sidelines. Daniel Jones, Riley Leonard doing workouts. Anthony Richardson is watching. And it now appears as though, I mentioned earlier Morocco Brown, who was the most, you could make the argument. I mean, Chris Ballard is ultimately the guy that makes the decision, but he was, I think, very reliant upon the scouting work that had been done by Morocco Brown and the belief of Morocco Brown in Richardson. And it appears as though Morocco Brown now no longer a part of the Colts organization. And he was he was the point man for the scouting of Anthony Richardson. So very interesting stuff. Again, JMV going to be at the Ale in Fishers coming up 3 o'clock. We will hand it off to him here in just about 30 minutes or so. And then I will be joining him later for our NBA Finals watch party, courtesy of our friends at Zinc Distributing and as well Michelob Ultra Zero. So we look forward to all of it over the course of today. More on this story with Richardson next. I just love it, man. Like, tonight's going to be a celebration and a party of the Pacers returning to the NBA Finals. Anheuser-Busch helping us put it all together. Mick Ultra Zero going to be there. El Emporium and Fishers and JMV Broadcasting. So look forward to all of it and hope to see everybody out there for the shows and the game later tonight. Eddie Garrison, which shirt you're going with there?
I went with the Zoom Baby shirt today. And by the way, JMV not live just from 3 to 6. It's a special edition for JMV tonight. He is going up until Pacers pregame at 8 o'clock. So JMV will be with you from 3 until 8 tonight. And then he'll have a special edition show on Sunday leading up to game number 2 between the Pacers and the Thunder. That will be from 6 to 7:30 at Tom's Watch Bar.
And I'll be with them certainly from 7 o'clock on today. And try to get there. I'll try to get there even a little bit before that. So I think it's going to be awesome. And I want to see everybody possible that can come out to say hello. And we're going to have a ton of fun. Now, I'm sure that the Anthony Richardson deal will be part of the conversation as well. And I'm curious whether or not, you know, I don't want to be an alarmist. I don't want to be an alarmist on it because there is a lot that takes place between now and, you know, the season, quite frankly. But if through an OTA, Richardson is already getting complication in pain in that shoulder, then that's an area of huge concern. And I feel bad, I'll be honest with you, I feel kind of bad for the Pacers because here they are in the final. This is what we should be talking about. The sports story in this town should be dominated right now by the fact that the Pacers are in the NBA playoffs.
In the NBA Finals, nonetheless.
The NBA Finals, yes. The Pacers have a chance here to win an NBA title for the first time in this town. And the Pacers, who have done everything right and 3 years ago or 4 years ago said, look, we're going to rebuild this and we're going to try to do it differently. And Rick Carlisle, who has himself adjusted as a coach and grown in terms of the way that he interacts with players and the offense that he comes up with and the brilliance of the, as they call it, organized chaos and the selflessness of Tyrese Halliburton and the emergence of Aaron Nesmith and the bulldog defense of Andrew Nembhard in the mid-range game and the quiet leadership of example for Pascal Siakam and Tony Bradley coming in and giving good minutes and TJ McConnell being a guy that just is that thorn that for the opposition that never seems to go away, and Ben Mathurin reinventing himself in the postseason and putting his head down and saying, I'm just going to be a bulldog and score, and I know that I've struggled, but now I'm back, and Aaron Nesmith catching lightning in a bottle and becoming a three-point shooter, and Obi Toppin doing whatever is asked and doing it really well, and then Miles Turner, who's been the face of this franchise and has been much maligned, and here he is, and he's stayed the course, and he's been a difference maker, and all of that, and everything that goes into it. We should be celebrating the Pacers, and we should be dominating the conversation of the Pacers, and instead we get sidebarred temporarily of it because the same guy that has been like a question mark that we've been promised is going to be a delivery for the Colts that has yet to deliver on it, and now we see that perhaps there are, you know, I don't know if people are losing their job over it or whatever it might be, but that percolates in the news, and I will admit, and maybe I'm trying to carry the water for one franchise versus the other, and maybe that's unfair, and maybe that's ridiculous. But there is part of me that's like, guys, can we just – and I'm guilty of it. Can we let the Pacers have their moment? Can we let the Pacers have their moment? Because here they are. And are they going to go out and get beaten 5? Maybe. Are they going to go out and get beaten 6? Maybe. Are they going to win the whole damn thing? Yeah, possibly. I don't know. What I know is this. What I know is I am in the second half century of my life, okay?
I haven't dropped that one in a while, Jay.
In the grand scheme of things, numerically speaking, I'm in the last third of my life based on, like, you know, I'm a middle-aged guy, right? I was born and raised in this town. I I bleed the torch. I love everything about Indianapolis. And in my lifetime, it's remarkable what this franchise has done. The number of conference finals they've been to, the competitiveness with which they have been able to operate in the NBA. And this is a team that had to hold a telethon just to get the money to stay and move into the NBA. And they played in the ABA, which at the time, Big Fun in the Funny League was the article written about it back in Sports Illustrated in the early 70s, because the ABA was considered to be the vaudevillian joke of the NBA. And they had a red, white, and blue basketball, and they shot three-pointers, and sure, they have Billy Keller and Roger Brown, who couldn't play in the NBA, and Mel Daniels and George McGinnis, but there's no way they can compete in the NBA. And now it's taken literally probably 40 years since the fold of the ABA and the merger of 4 franchises into the NBA for people to take serious the level of basketball that was played in the ABA. And the ABA was a very, very good, talented, rich league. And it wasn't thought that way by a lot of people in the early 70s. But the creme de la creme, the top of the benchmark franchise of the ABA, was the Indiana Pacers. And then they get into the NBA, and it's taken them a long time to find their way. But you know what? They don't get the accolades that the Lakers get. They don't get the constant headlines and conversation that the Knicks get. They don't get the marquee, sales of merchandise like the Heat get. But they've been really consistent. 94, 95, 98, 2000, 04, into the 20 teens in conference finals. And yet only once before did they break through and get into the NBA finals. And now they're there on the doorstep of it. And we should be celebrating it. Yes, I know it was a hassle yesterday for people to get stuck, and it wasn't the best planned event ever, in rush hour traffic for Pennsylvania being lined up literally like from here to Kokomo for people trying to get a swag bag of Pacers gear. But that's what this city does. It embraces winners. It embraces champions. And it embraces people who have scruples and go about it the right way. And I'm not saying the Colts haven't done that. And the Colts absolutely did do it when they won a Super Bowl. But the Pacers now, it's their turn in the limelight. It's their turn in the spotlight. And that's what we should be ubiquitously discussing right now and celebrating in Indianapolis, is the fact that they're right there. And they didn't go into the luxury tax to get there. And they didn't go out and buy players to get there. You know what they did? They got cast-offs from elsewhere that needed a second lease on life. And they got a coach that left Dallas and then came back home again to Indiana to show that he could once again take a franchise to the NBA Finals. And here they are. And it's a Disney script because they're going against a team in Oklahoma City that 3 years ago was the laughingstock of the league. And I think I made jokes about the fact that they had more draft picks accumulated than like most franchises have in 20 years. I mean, it was unbelievable, but they've hit on them. And that's part of the challenge, is drafting correctly, and they've done that. And that's what we should be celebrating. And so that's what we're going to do tonight at the Ale and Fishers with Mick Ultra Zero, and JMV is going to be there, and I'm going to be there, and we're going to have fun, and we're going to celebrate it. And no matter which way this game goes, no matter which team wins it, they still got to win 3 more. But man, it'd be great to get game 1. Eddie, I don't know if you and your, although you seem to have backed off of your degeneracy, but have you looked at some of the different like prop bets, if you will, for tonight that are of intrigue?
Jake, I've never stopped with the degeneracy or slowed down with the degeneracy. I just don't talk about it as much because I feel like not that many people care.
It's kind of like your fantasy team, if you will.
Yeah, exactly.
But it is interesting, right, to look at. For example, I'll give you a couple. You ready?
Yep.
30.5. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, over under.
I lean towards over.
Okay. 14 free throws made. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, over under.
Ooh. I'm hoping for under. Made or attempted?
Made.
I'm going under.
Okay. 17.5. Total number of points for Tyrese Halliburton. Over under.
I don't know. I probably have to lean under right now just because he's always struggled against them.
3.5. 3-point shots made combined between Aaron Nesmith and Pascal Siakam.
Oh, boy.
I'm just making these up. These are pretty good, if you don't mind me saying so.
I'd probably go under because you're probably going to need – man, that's tough. Like, you're going to need either 2 from each or 3 and 1, which is not out of the realm of possibility. I think Pascal has an advantage tonight. And I don't think he'll be outside the 3-point line much.
Okay.
Just because, depending on how they match up, if it's Isaiah Hartenstein defending him, then he can drive right by him. If they get given the ball at the free throw line and let him just go right to the basket. And if it's Chet Holmgren, he can, kind of like we saw with Giannis a couple times, where he could just bend underneath him or back him down just because Chet is a frail guy.
He is a frail guy, yes, that's correct.
So I'm looking at a sportsbook right now, and for Tyrese, it's 17.5.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Are you okay? Go ahead.
Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, 33.5.
I said 32, right?
You said 30.
Okay. 17.5 is. Was I exactly right on that on Halliburton?
Yeah. Yep.
For somebody who doesn't gamble a lot, that's pretty impressive. My astute knowledge of how these things can be laid out, right? Okay. What about this? You ready?
Yeah.
Over under.
And by the way, if you did, so Pascal's 1.5 over under, and Nesmith is 1.5 over under, so therefore it'd be 3.5 if you combine them.
I mean, do you ever just say to yourself when you go home, I am so lucky 3 hours a day to have access to that sort of brilliance?
No.
Okay.
I know you do, though. It's okay.
No, I have it 24 hours a day.
No, with me. Duh.
Yeah. Okay. Tell me this. This is not an over-under, or not a prop bet, but I'm going to give it to you anyway. You ready?
Yes, I am.
6.5. Over-under the halftime deficit either way.
Oh, man. I will go under.
Okay. I think if the Pacers are within 10 at the half, they're in good shape. I'm not saying they're going to win, but I'm saying like you know what I mean? This could be one of those games where you just come out and you run into a buzzsaw right away. It just happens on the road. It does. And Oklahoma City at home is very, very, very good. You kind of knew
Oklahoma City was the best team in the third quarter all season.
Didn't you know going into Game 5 that New York was going to have like kind of an avalanche game?
Maybe, but I also felt like there was an aspect to Indiana where they would come out and try to end it.
No, well, for sure, and I think they did. But
New York played harder.
Yeah, that's right. And New York just, everything. You just have those games where everything, you get 3 quick threes, and then all of a sudden some guy hits from the logo, and there's a loose ball steal, and it's like you go through stretches where you're like, man, and I'm not saying Indiana, I'm saying any team that you watch, where you go through periods and you're like, gosh, just nothing. I'm a huge believer, and this is a kind of a hot take sports thing.
Oh, really? You have a hot take?
I'm a huge believer in momentum. I know there are people that are like, no, momentum's a made-up emotion. I don't buy that at all. I think momentum's totally real.
I think it is too, especially because if your team has momentum, then your crowd is into it. Especially if you're at home. And if you're on the road, the opposing team's crowd is definitely not into it, making life a whole lot easier for you.
Yeah.
As a road player.
I mean, sometimes when the roof caves in, man, the roof caves in.
I'll tell you what, Jake, I'm looking at a sports book right now. Ben Shepherd, 2.5 points. Over under.
He's got to hit 1-3. I would take that, right?
I would definitely take it too, especially with the
corner threes they give up.
Yeah, and that's primarily where he's, standing or moving around towards in the offense.
I mean, that feels like what is he? What did he average against New York?
Let me look.
That feels almost like it's a bait and switch or something. Feels almost too obvious.
So let's see. He did not score in game 1 or game 6, but he scored in game 2. He scored 6 points. Game 3, he scored 3 points. Game 4, he scored 2 points. Game 5, he scored 8.
Okay, then maybe and their defense. But again, we talked about it yesterday. The one area there that Oklahoma City is very susceptible is hitting those corner threes. It's the one area where they are susceptible.
And in 2 regular season matchups against Oklahoma City, he had 10 points and 5 points. Played 20 minutes in both.
Yeah, I mean. Hey, Jake, if 5 or more Pacers score in double digits, they'll win. It's been that way all playoffs. Yeah, Oklahoma City, though, is a historic defense.
If they score 110 or more, that's been the number. That's
right. That's their magic number, right?
They haven't lost yet when they score at least 110. And Oklahoma City, I think, is I'd have to double check, but I know most of their losses have come when they've given up 110 points. I think they're 1-3.
Man, I'm telling you, the scoring 110 against that defense is going to be tough. But look, I think it's going to be a great game. The one thing that I will let people know, I mean, you all know this, right? But it's so easy to get caught up in the emotion of the moment. The bottom line is this. It's one game out of 7. And yes, you want to get the game won so you take home court advantage back right then and there. Would be awesome. Be awesome to go in and steal it.
Oklahoma City 2-4 in this postseason when giving up over 110 points.
Okay. John is going to be up with you next. He is at the Ale Emporium in Fishers. I will be joining him a little after 6, and then there for our NBA Finals viewing party, courtesy of our friends at Michelob Ultra Zero. And they're watching the game, samples, the Hermanaki wings, all of it. I'll hop on with John over the course of, he's going to be on with you until 8 o'clock, taking you right up to game time. Pregame at 8, game at 8:30. NBA Finals is here. It's been a quarter century. Can't wait for it. It's going to be awesome tonight. It's going to be a party, a celebration. No matter what happens in the game, we're celebrating the fact that Indianapolis is there and the sports world is all eyes on what's taking place with the Pacers. So we'll discuss it again tomorrow, but I look forward to seeing you tonight. John's up next.